This morning's meeting to order. First thing is the approval of the agenda with additions.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, citizens be heard. I see there's none out there. We'll move on to approval of the minutes from March the 3rd.
Move approval. Second.
Okay, we got a motion to approve the minutes from March the 3rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Bills, they've been passed around.
Move to pay the bills.
Second.
Motion by Kevin, second by Grant to approve the bills. All in favor? Okay. Okay, I think the first thing we'll do this morning is take the addition that we've got. Gabe, we want to declare our state of emergency related to COVID-19.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning,
You
Commissioners.
are distanced, I got it.
Just fine.
Taking this serious.
Yeah.
So, yesterday I did draft a emergency declaration, or a temporary declaration that Chairman, Board Chair signed. And then I've, since then, drafted the resolution that I would recommend the county board sign off on. Just a little kind of history on this, or my reasoning why. I've been working closely with public health. Obviously, this is a public health response. Emergency management supports public health operations, and they are extremely busy, coming to the point where they're getting overwhelmed. Some direction I got from HSEM make a decision to declare too was one of the things they put out there. If your county or city needs additional local powers enabled by a declaration, then we should be considering declaring it. And obviously some of our county policy and stuff, it's much easier for us to temporarily change it, modify it, whatnot under a declaration for the time of that declaration if we need to do things like that. It also makes available, streamlines the process of acquiring additional, if we need additional services, additional equipment, things of that nature. And it does make it employees that are salaried employees in the county able to earn overtime in the event that they're having to backfill for other employees that aren't able to make it to work due to child care issues. Obviously, there's a lot of planning. Each department head now is going to have to update their COOP plan, which is a continuity of operations plan in preparation of this, because we just don't know how many employees will be affected, what kind of services are going to be cut short, whatnot. So there's going to be a lot of countywide, a lot of probably disruption in our normal operations, and a lot of additional work that's going to have to go into just preparing and planning for this, and staffing at least to maintain operations best we can. So that's my recommendation, kind of why I really feel like we're at this point. Obviously, there's a possibility of some sort of reimbursement and funding on that, but due to the presidential and gubernatorial declarations, we automatically are eligible for that anyway. So that our declaration doesn't necessarily affect that or not. I have met with department heads and Steve, and we are starting to track everything. So any sort of man hours, expenses, and whatnot related to COVID-19 are being tracked, so we can document that. And if there is, like I said, any sort of repayment for that, or the possibility of repayment for that later, we'll have that all documented. So any questions on, I guess, my end of this response so far?
I got one question. Is it there's two paragraphs there. The first two, aren't they the same?
Essentially, don't ask me why they're drafted that way. There's a template that we use, and that's for it. So.
All right. Making double sure.
Yep.
So
Gabe, the state of emergency declaration, does that come with similar funding mechanisms as when we declare a disaster declaration? In there, for example, in the event of flooding?
Correct.
It's very similar to that?
Correct. So it would forego maybe somewhat like the procedures of having to get contracts and things like that. It streamlines that process. So if we did need to make purchases, it's easier to do, or like I said, to bring in additional help, manpower, have people working overtime shifts and stuff like that. It's just a lot easier. We don't have to go through all the steps to do that.
I'll move resolution 2020-15.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to adopt resolution 2020-15. And a second. I don't know when we should bring up as far as canceling meetings and stuff like that, and out-of-state travel that we've approved before. When do we rescind that? Do we discuss that later? Is this the appropriate time to discuss that?
We certainly can talk about that. We have a couple meetings that are scheduled for this week. Our small city and our county meeting on Thursday, 4 to 6. We're also scheduled to meet with the city of Moorhead on Friday from 11 to 2. And so that would be something that would be up to consideration for the board, whether they'd like to cancel that.
Yeah, if I could speak to that a little bit. Obviously, I'm taking my cues from public health and then also CDC recommendations and stuff like that. So I guess my suggestion would be that, we follow the distancing guidelines that CDC and public health are putting out to us. So that's, I guess, my 2 cents on that.
So you're saying cancel the,
Well, if their guideline right now is limit to groups of 10 or less, if meetings are more than that or whatnot, yeah, I would
well, that's what I was
recommend.
thinking too, as long as we're talking about this COVID-19 right now, that we should probably look at canceling now so we notify people about it. So.
Well, I certainly think it's appropriate for us to cancel those meetings. I think that, I don't want to say the issues aren't important, but at this point it seems to be that they'll take a back burner to what we're dealing with currently. And so from this board's perspective, canceling our meetings going forward, obviously we have some committee assignments that require quorums to pass bills and whatnot, so I think we'll deal with those on a case-by-case basis, but I definitely feel that discussing limiting staff out-of-state trips, obviously Fargo probably would be the exception, would be something we should talk about too.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering. I know we've approved out-of-state travel for some people. I don't know when it was approved for, but if it isn't something we should look at, whether it's something that can be canceled out, or I would say almost that those meetings will be canceled, that they won't even have a choice as far as where they're going to go.
Well, Mr. I can think of the engineer and assistant engineer, and I think in early April they're supposed to be going, and I don't think we should wait for somebody else to make that decision for us. I think we should just, after we vote on this resolution, I think we can maybe act on canceling all out of state, with the exception of local for, we can maybe put a time period in there
April 15th.
through the end of April or something and relook at it.
All right. That's another item. We got a motion on the floor right now for resolution 2020-15. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay.
Thank you.
Gabriel, you're going to be around here for Kathy's deal. We might have more questions.
With that, we'll go to Joe. Trying to keep us warm with his boilers.
Yeah. Morning.
Morning, Joe.
So, we met with the building committee last Thursday to go over this boiler replacement project for the courthouse. So, today I'm asking permission to go ahead and advertise for RFPs for the mechanical portion of this project. As we design this project, we recognize that the mechanical portion has the ability to go over that threshold that requires RFP. So what I'm doing is requesting to advertise today for that, and at the same time go out and I would obtain some quotes for the remainder portions of the project, which are the electrical and controls and the boilers themselves. So we're doing this because we're managing this project in-house, so it's kind of chopped up that way. But I guess the timeline I would have is we'd advertise starting this Monday and have a bid opening on April 14th. And then I'd come back recommendation on the 21st with the RFP mechanical portion tied in with all the quotes and the soft costs. I'd have basically a total project cost of this on the 21st for recommendation on it. Other than that, as far as an engineer quote, we have an estimated quote of about $330,000 right now. I think that's pretty high and safe number, I guess. But if that was a number, worst case scenario, taking that out of Fund 19, we have $475,000 right now. So I think we have plenty to pay for it, but, yeah, that's it. So I guess today would be the first step. Don't know how that would play in with the next month, I guess, as far as, you know, board meetings and stuff like that. Obviously, the RFP would be advertised to be open on the 21st, or on the 14th, so. Anyways, I guess I'm requesting to move forward with it.
Joe took us a tour of the two boilers that are downstairs. One's already inoperational, can't use that one anymore, so, I mean, we need to do something down there, and by doing something down there, if you do a tour of the room, you're gonna find out we're gonna get another room. I mean, we're gonna take out those two big boilers
Yeah.
and end up with two smaller furnaces, and
Yep.
and we're gonna almost get another supply room down there or something up there.
I'll move to approve the request.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the request to move ahead with replacing the boilers downstairs. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Ron, now, we're gonna look to fill a vacancy for a child protection worker.
Good morning.
Morning, Ron, now.
This does feel strange. The yellow line is up there.
Next week you'll be back home.
Those are just covering cables. It's not cautionary.
Okay, I am here to, we unfortunately had another resignation in our ongoing child protection unit. She's been here just over a year, around the year mark. She's one of our ongoing case managers. This has been a full-time approved position, and I'm seeking approval to fill that position. And then to backfill should there be any movement, but that rarely, if ever, happens in child protection. I would add that after the board agenda went out on Thursday, I got a second resignation, also a child protection worker. She's in our assessment unit. She's been here about a year and a half with a resignation. Her resignation notice was May 14th. So I would be asking if I could add that to the request as well and get approval to replace both those positions.
Jenny?
I have a question. The resignations because of another opportunity, wages, what?
The resignation in our ongoing child protection unit is the stress of the job, the workload. She is applying to go back to school, although she didn't have formal plans of that. She did seek different employment, but she felt that she really could not kind of pursue that education while doing a job like this. The second resignation, she actually had gone to school and got her master's, and she was looking more in the therapy services, so she got different employment as well.
Okay.
I am hoping to meet with the Personnel Issues Committee in the next week or two, if possible. We are, the ongoing child protection unit with the caseloads and the number of kids that we have in placement, I need to request additional staff. We have somebody out on FMLA, and with the constant turnover, the staff cannot manage the cases that we have. So we just really have to do something quickly to try to stop the bleeding that's happening, to be honest with you, in the unit.
Well, I think it's appropriate to probably have that discussion with PIC. We should also probably, when the virus stuff settles down, reconvene the out-of-home placement committee to look critically at related issues with that, to just see what else can be done to help.
Okay.
I'd move the request.
I'll make second, sorry.
Okay, we got a motion and a second, I take it that's for both positions?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. Kimberly, got a few items here. Compliance committee reports. Request for out-of-state travel, yes. Annual updates. We may
Yes, good
scratch
morning.
one, but we'll see.
Well, the first item that I have on the agenda is the approval of our compliance committee. The compliance committee met earlier this year. Grant was present at our meeting. In 2019, the recorder's office was 100% compliant, and therefore we met the statutory requirements to allow us to share our funds with other land record departments. So for the budget of 2021, we agreed to use $105,000 of the compliance fund for the other county land records departments. And with that, we recommended disbursement as stated on the memo down there. Do you have any questions regarding the compliance fund?
Do you need a,
We do need, it does have to be approved by the board for the
Okay.
spending of this.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Did, Mr. Chairman, did any of these numbers change from last year?
No, they remain the same.
Any further discussion? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, second part, out-of-state travel.
Well, I asked for that to be put on the agenda a few weeks ago for this day, and with the circumstances that have happened in the last week, I will not be attending it, even if it is still on, because it was at the end of May, and I will not travel to it, so we can
Okay,
do that for now.
thank you.
Okay. Move on to number 3, annual update. Steve passed out some statements here.
Yes, I have a little bit of a handout here. Just kind of wanted to start with what we do here in the recorder's office. Our mission is to promptly record, file, and preserve documents accurately in an efficient, responsible, and professional manner for posterity and legal purposes. We do all records pertaining to real estate, birth, death, marriage, marriage credentials, notary public registration, and filing of state and federal tax liens. Some of our highlights from the past year are that we implemented Property Fraud Alert, which is a free online subscription service that is offered to the public, where they can sign up and have their name monitored on anything that can be recorded in our office. So if there is fraudulent activity going on, they can be aware of it sooner rather than years down the road. The other thing this past year that the Recorder's Office has been working with the Cass County Recorder to implement CREA local meetings. That's a Property Records Industry Association where we meet with the local title companies, banks, attorneys, people who are dealing with our property records to provide some educational opportunities there. Our other big thing that we've been working on this last year is our software conversion. We did go live a couple of weeks ago on March 3rd. Some of the preparations included back indexing of almost 15,000 documents with parcel numbers and legal descriptions. So my staff has done a wonderful job doing a lot of preparation work for this. We spent a lot of time training with our software companies, so they have been excellent on that. There's some new features that we're able to do with our new software, and that allows us the ability to e-return the document. So as soon as it's recorded, they'll get an electronic copy sent to them. They no longer have to wait for it, confirmation in the mail. So that's kind of an exciting feature. It also allows us a more secure backup of our data and recorded images. We're no longer being housed here on a server in Clay County. We're being housed with our software company who is doing all of our backup for us. In 2019, we had 13 plats that were recorded. Plats included the cities of Barnesville, Dilworth, Glendon, Moorhead, and Hewlin. And then in the townships of Holly and Oakport. So we really saw platted subdivisions all over the county and not just here in Moorhead. And in 2019, we offered online subscription paid access to over 30 customers accessing our records. And that's not just locally here, that's people from the cities, that's people from all over the United States accessing our records. Goals for the future, the Minnesota Department of Health is working on training modules for us, but I have a feeling that will probably be delayed now. And then we're going to continue to digitize our records for preservation. On the back of the handout I gave you is just some document recording counts. You can kind of see where we're trending for the past 5 years. You can see kind of June, July, and August are kind of our busy peaks for marriage licenses and documents. Do you guys have any questions for me regarding anything in the reporter's office?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Kimberly, the Real ID thing is coming up where it's going to be required by later this year. And in order to get that, people need certified birth certificates.
Certified birth certificates and certified marriage records. We have been extremely busy at our counter.
So is the marriage certificate only if there was a change of name?
Yes, if they've had a change of name is my understanding.
So someone who hasn't had to change a name, they don't need that for the...
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay. So what's the process? I've had people asking me to get a certified birth certificate.
So for a certified birth certificate, you do have to have tangible interest. So it has to be yourself, your spouse, your parent, your grandparent requesting it. There's a list that's out by statute that you have to file under one of those categories to request it. We would need to see your ID, government issued ID, when you come into the counter. If you're not able to come in here, there is the option where you can have your signature notarized and mail the form in to us. The fee for a certified birth certificate is $26, and they get issued on the spot as long as there's no problems. And then the requests that are being sent in to us through the mail, we're fulfilling those the same day or the very next day.
Does that price change for somebody who might want multiple copies?
If they want an additional copy at the same time, the second one would be $19.
Okay.
And then
And everyone thereafter?
Yes, yep. And then the marriage certificate is just a flat $9 fee no matter how many copies they request. And there's no ID requirements for it.
And in this day of, so there is a process where they can do it electronically or by mail in the event that, with all this stuff going on?
They would still have to have it notarized.
Okay.
So they would still have to either go to a notary in person or find a remote notarization, which can be a little bit expensive.
Okay. Thank you. I would imagine the demand for those are going to be going up.
Yes, the last probably 6 to 9 months, we've really had an
I'm one of
increase.
them, so.
Thanks for reminding me, yeah.
Yes.
I don't even know where my marriage certificate is.
Any other questions about the recorder's office?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I would note that the software conversion that Kimberly and her staff went through was very extensive. And in speaking with the software company, they identified that by far Kimberly's department was the best conversion as far as preparation and implementation that they've had. And so I think that recognizing that's important. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very
Well
much.
done.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Okay. With that, I guess we forgot to mention, now Janie will not be here for her update, and then we'll move on to Brian. Malcolm will give us update on the county attorney's office.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, hello, thanks for allowing me to give you an update, and just want to start off by saying I appreciate the support that the board has given the county attorney's office over the summer years and over the last year. 2019 was definitely, I would say, is probably a volatile year, just with turnover. We had a retirement, we had a couple attorneys that went to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then the changeover with the city contract, Moorhead having their own attorneys, that drew 3 attorneys away from our office. So, you know, with an office of 12 attorneys, 6 of them with turnover, and then at that time I, of course, was deployed and now back. And so again, I appreciate your support over the years. As you may know, I did retire from the National Guard, so after 28 years never being able to grow a beard, I grew a beard for a little while. So, with that, we are fully staffed now, so we're 12 attorneys, including myself. Definitely have some younger attorneys in the office now, but a lot of energy in there, a lot of people doing a lot of good work and everything. So thought I'd give you just an update of things that are going on with our mission. The mission of the Clay County Attorney's Office is to promote justice, public safety, effective government by prosecuting crime, protecting those in need, and representing Clay County. We do this through the assistant Clay County attorneys that do their work every day. They really are the front line in making charging decisions, trying cases, and providing services to the many county agencies that rely on our legal assistance. So there on the office itself, me as the Clay County attorney, obviously. Pam Foss is my chief assistant for criminal. I think you know her pretty well, and she served as the acting county attorney while I was gone. Tony Weigel, the chief assistant for civil, and then there's 6 assistant county attorneys working criminal matters, and then 3 assistant county attorneys working civil matters. Again, I would thank you for the additional attorney that we were able to get in the civil division. We hired a young lady by the name of Caitlin Herlock. She started a couple weeks ago. I can tell you, I think I had mentioned to you that one of our attorneys that's in the civil division was going to go on FMLA due to her having a baby. Well, of course, she had the baby early, and then one of the other attorneys that's in the civil division, she was gone for a few days and was ill, and so you had one person, Tony, working the civil division for about 3 or 4 days, and you could see the stress that puts on it just for that little bit of time. And so without having that additional attorney, I think we would have really seen a struggle. Instead, we're going to have, we'll make it with 3 for a while here, and then when Katie comes back after maternity leave, I think that 4-person unit doing civil matters will be, the right amount. And you'll see here in the future here some of the numbers that are increasing. We have our 2 front office personnel. We have 5 legal assistants. And then we have 3 victim witness service staff, really 1 full-time and 2 part-time. And that's probably the area that's the least manned right now, or lower number. It's something in the future that we're going to have to really look at. Over the years, it's almost been exclusively or largely funded through grant funding, and we just see the requirements to service victims really has a large impact in the community. It has a lot of numbers. Our numbers just keep increasing, and so that's probably the area that we need to look at some point to take care of and add some staff to eventually. Looking at the caseloads, I mean, just in general, caseloads of criminal activity within the county, by and large, continue to increase. I guess anecdotally, when we look at it, the increase is really due to growth of population and then drug use within the community. And so if you look at those numbers from what you'll see here coming up is just a snapshot from 17, 18, and 19. But we had 2,908 cases opened in 17, 3,382 cases in 2018, and 2,510 cases opened in 2019. We average about 20 to 25 jury trials per year, which is about 2 per month. And I'd say that's probably fairly aggressive. I would say most counties are probably a little lower than that, but we're a fairly aggressive office. So, but if you look at that generally over all those numbers, the majority of cases will settle and resolve. Really, the decrease when you look at numbers from 18 to 19, those decreases are largely due to the city prosecution contract being gone. So the items that go to the city and the city's prosecution, between Moorhead, Dilworth, Barnesville, and Glendon, so that's their misdemeanor thefts, misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor DWIs, and misdemeanor domestic assaults. And so that's a volume-based piece that they take over, and you'll see where some of those decreases come when I show you the numbers. Probably one of our bigger projects that we'll work on over the next year, or we have been working already, everything that we do now is pretty much digital. So everything in the old days when we went to court, we had paper files that we brought that had everything to court. Since 2018, we do everything on laptops, so we bring laptops to the court, and we have a system called MCAPS that's a prosecution system that's a database and does all our charging and everything else, and then that database keeps everything within it so that we can go and function in between court. It's good for updating, good for other attorneys to be able to see what the other attorney's written without having that actual paper file in hand. but everything prior to 18 still is in paper form down in our office. And so we're over time here having the legal assistants and the front office people take those files and scan them in so that we can ultimately have those old files digitized, and so we won't have any paper files probably within another year or so. And it helps for space too. We have a large filing system that is mainly sitting there, and eventually that'll just be space to be able to use as office space. So. Probably one of the big things, I know that the drug court, veteran court team and Judge Lawson and Don Calson came here and talked to you. Obviously, we're very invested in the treatment courts and the accountability courts. We put a lot of time and effort into both drug court, veterans court. I guess fortunately for us, we haven't had a lot of veterans. We screen anybody that comes through that may have committed a crime and that may be a veteran that could benefit from an accountability court, where if they have either addiction issues or mental health issues that are causing them to commit crimes, we'll look to help them get in there just the same as we would with drug court. But we haven't had a lot of veterans that have come through that are committing crimes, so I guess that part's good. If it does happen, we'll look to help get them the benefit. Domestic violence court is more of an accountability court. It's more the fact that the domestic violence has occurred and we're trying to monitor those individuals and make sure that they're doing their treatment, that they're not committing new crimes, that they're not violating the terms of what they have to do with court. And so we just have a greater level of supervision on those offenders. And then victim services. Victim services is there to provide assistance to victims through the entire criminal prosecution process, including hearing, trial preparation, court accompaniment. They assist them in completing restitution requests, or if there's reparation. Sometimes restitution comes at the end of a court case and that defendant making restitution, but many times people might be out of work or have to miss work, or maybe they have items, if a cell phone got destroyed, something else like that. There are programs through reparations that can help some individuals get that up front. You can just look at, I just gave you just 2019, we filed affidavits of loss for individuals on the personal level. We had 53, totaling an amount of $59,390 that was recovered for personal crimes. And then for Clay County businesses, we had a total of 114, totaling $173,332. 51,000 of that was for under insurance. We help insurance companies that could recover, but that's still leaving $121,491 that are money that's recovered for Clay County businesses. You can look at the numbers of victims served. From 2017, 977 victims, 2018, 996, and 2019, 900. That loss, or that lower number, is due to our loss from the city services contract. But you can see that the contacts with victims continues to increase. They're just more, it gives us more time to be able to have contact with them, help them through process, help them get their affidavit of loss or their victim impact statements done. So that's an important piece of the things that the victim services is doing. So just looking at some of the numbers of some of the crimes, you can look there, the graphs that we have there. At the bottom, crime damage to property remains pretty steady, somewhere between 16 to 20 per year. If you look at the welfare fraud, those have increased from 47 up to 61 in 2018, back down to 50. And generally what you're seeing, there might be different self-corrections, year to year might be a little bit higher, then a little bit lower, but generally the trend all the way through is just going up. Those are, just like you saw in the stock market, it might be here for a while, then increase, be up here for a while, then increase. Generally, most of those numbers are just increasing, again, due to population. And then if you look at, say, the theft and burglary, a large portion of those have some type of drug-related piece to them. People that are drug addicted, drug issues, breaking into homes or breaking into a business, trying to take money to get money for drugs. And so you see really the theft cases increasing from 84 up to 128 and up to 138 in 2019. When you see those 40 and 50 amount increases, those are big numbers that obviously we're having to deal with. Those are monetary impacts on the community and on businesses or on personnel. And then the burglaries, you can see those increased from 34 up to 70, both 70 and then down to 65 in 2019 burglaries. The personal crimes, you can kind of see there, if you look at the bottom, criminal sexual assault remains pretty steady. That's obviously a very intensive criminal area, children that are impacted and injured, and so they take a lot of intense work, and typically Pam Foss in my office is the main person that handles those. You can see the assaults themselves look to be on the increase from 69 in 2017 up to 106 in 2019. You can see where the misdemeanor domestic assault dropped off. So those misdemeanor domestic assaults that went from 69 up to 144, there's still a lot of misdemeanor domestic assaults, but they're way down for the ones we're handling out of the county, and the rest of those are all going to the city. But you can see that the felony ones are really increasing from 150 in 2017 up to 220. So those are the more serious, either people have multiple prior domestics, or if they're domestic assault with strangulation and a felony level type offense. Our DWI crimes, you can see just the numbers, how they decreased, the ones that we're handling from 251 or 260 down to 92. And again, those are the ones the city would handle. And then misdemeanor ones from 70 down to 26. And then you can see our drug crimes, how they've increased. And so that's one of our biggest things. Sheriff Empting and I have a lot of meetings in regard to drug issues and drug crimes. We still see a lot of methamphetamine. You'll hear about heroin being in the community, those types of things, but we're not seeing that really to the same level as we still see a lot of methamphetamine issues that we're dealing with, a lot of addiction, but methamphetamine being the biggest issue. But numbers going from 113 up to 159 within the city of Moorhead, and up to from 50 to 100 within the county. And so you're seeing some of those doubling. I would hope we're not going to see a continuing doubling all the time, because that would really become some serious issues. But we are seeing increases, and so we're just constantly dealing with a lot of drug issues that are going on. And then finally, the last thing would be the civil side of things. Our commitments continue to be pretty heavy. Mental health issues within the community. The jail has to deal with a lot of those, and then we're dealing with getting those individuals into care within community-based settings. So those numbers are pretty heavy. 53 last year. Our CHIPS, Child Need Protection Services, as you can see, went from about 50 up to 97 in 2019. And then, so that double, again, is a big number. But then really our last one that you can see our juvenile numbers, and I even looked to see if maybe that was some kind of anomaly of how we were counting or something. But again, I think due to population growth is really the reason you see from 212 juvenile cases up to 444. That's a huge number. I don't really have an answer as to why that increased that level. We usually don't see that kind of jump, but obviously it's there. I'd like to see again if those, somehow that wasn't the right number, but unfortunately it is a big number and it is the right number. So those are some things that we're dealing with, and so those numbers are the kind of numbers that the civil caseload is working with. So I think we have a train coming through. That's just
Apocalypse.
Freight train.
That's okay. Kathy's going to follow me up here anyway. I want to say, a couple things on, with the coronavirus piece. The courts are definitely following the lead from Governor Walz and have already directed a lot of things to change in the way that we're doing things currently. They've taken a look at certain things that are considered high-level issues, things that are very time-sensitive, people that are arrested and have to be arraigned, child need protection services if there's emergency protective care hearings, different things that are time-sensitive. They have high priority and will still remain on the docket. Other cases that are not as time-sensitive have been removed so that they're not coming in large quantities, so regular arraignments on tickets or other things like that. You're not going to see those for a period of time, up through at least March 30th. Then they're going to reevaluate to see what happens after that. More serious jury trials that are speedy demands where a person is incarcerated, has made a speedy demand for trial, those will still remain. There's some issues that the court's trying to work through to make sure they can protect citizens if they come in as jurors and have to sit together. They're still working through that. Luckily, we haven't had to have a jury trial yet. This week, they are working through it. There may be some, even next week that we would still have to consider. But the court is definitely looking to reduce as many hearings down as possible and only handle the most sensitive and serious ones. So that's where we're at right now with coronavirus from the court's standpoint. And obviously, there's a lot more issues that Kathy's working through. So with that, any questions you might have or anything else, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I was interested in your drug crimes, stuff like that. I'm sure it's just going to be an opinion, but do you feel there's more drug use, or is there just more emphasis on enforcement there?
I think we're constantly trying to fight. When you're looking to fight both supply and demand, the supply still comes. Many years ago, if you probably remember, Mr. Chair, we used to see a lot more manufacture within the county. There used to be manufacturing of methamphetamine, and the one law you ever saw that really just changed a lot of things when they put pseudoephedrine behind the counter and didn't let people get a hold of large quantities of pseudoephedrine, and it stopped the manufacture almost completely. When we went from 20 cases a month down to 0. But now you see the manufacture coming from Mexico and other South American, Central American countries. It's coming up. We're on a very much a straight, I-29 and 94 are both high impact interstates that are having a lot of traffic that come through on drug trafficking. So I would say the supply is there, and unfortunately the demand keeps being there when you try to get treatment to people, help them, or you try to make sure that the drug dealers themselves are put in prison as long as possible to cut off that supply side of things. But it just continues to, more people look to, they either get addicted or they get into it for whatever reason, and we just have to deal with them as they come. But I would say more people are just taking it.
Yeah, thank you. Brian, we have a few minutes here, so I'd like to have a little bit of a dialogue with something that I've seen in the news, and my source has been what's been reported in the forum and the media regarding what Cass County is doing with their jailing and trying to reduce the population there. Obviously, it seems to me that there has to be part of that has to be through our county attorneys and of course the courts. I kind of, when it comes to some of these misdemeanor things where, they've obviously broken the law and they have to do some time, but is there an opportunity to determine when that time can be served? I have a couple of real concerns. Some of these probably people who would be more eligible to be released might be ones that are now being out on a work release or something like that. And in the current times that we're in, if they're out on work release, can they come in? And if they were to have an infection, that right away puts our own staff at risk, and it puts all the other inmates at risk. And a deep concern for me on that is if we have those inmates that get in that situation, they're really sick and they end up in an ICU or something like that, that becomes the responsibility of the county to pay. So it's not just about money here, but I think we have to try to have some common sense. And some of the people say, well, that's kind of stupid that you're letting them out. Well, that's really not what it's about. So it's if somebody is sentenced to do time according to what they should be doing, can we delay that a little bit? Do we have options to delay that while this epidemic is here, or pandemic, I mean, is what I meant to say, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, thank you for the question, Commissioner. And so the courts, the county attorney's office, public defender's office, the judges all met yesterday. I expect we'll have additional meetings ongoing to address coronavirus issues. One of the main questions and issues, and also, by the way, I should mention sheriff and jail staff were there, because that exact issue is an issue that we have been discussing, with the issue of trying to limit court appearances the issue of people who are in custody and need to be addressed, we need to figure out what to do with those. And so we've already taken a look at, I've sat down with Julie Sabat from the jail, individuals who are low-level consideration, either have low-level bail, and maybe are not the worst offender, and don't have like a personal crime with it. I mean, some of the issues that we need to look at is both public safety, but then if there's a victim attached with it and some of the issues that go with that, we need to address those each individually. But I can tell you, I reviewed, there were some people that are in because they have several failures to appear in the past, but really their crimes are fairly minimal. Several of them were possession of hypodermic needles, because of addiction issues and everything. And so we were looking at the bail level of those, and so we are looking to reduce some of that population. And so it's a few reasons. I mean, we've talked about it's both to, if the issue were to come where jail staff is infected and they can't man the jail at the same levels they would need to in the past, then they would need to potentially look to shut down one certain area, that lower level area, so that they don't have to man that and they can man the main areas and the more severe criminals and make sure that they're manning that area. So we have looked at some of those. We now have the next tier that we're looking at to address and see if some of those individuals can either be released on electronic home monitoring, or if we should look to release them depending on if they're doing a sentence, but regularly they're out doing sentence to serve, that type of thing, or even have work release. Currently, and I should not really speak for Julie, but I know from what we talked about, the work release program as of today, starting today, will no longer be initiated. So people that either they need to be, if they're not going to be in jail, they need to be released so they could maintain their job. Otherwise, they're not going to allow them to do that because of that exact issue. They don't want people going out and then coming back and potentially infecting a larger scale of the population, because if it does get in there, it could be a larger problem. So they don't want that happening. So we're limiting work release. We're also limiting writs and some transfer and transport across the state. So if people get picked up on warrants in other parts of the state, we may not transport them currently, again, so we try to make sure we limit who may or may not get infected. So we are looking at all those issues, talking with the courts, taking some direction from them. Obviously, some of it very much is our concern, because you could look at a population piece, just so you talk about, but we also need to concern about public safety, make sure we don't release people that have serious offenses and or have not, if we took a long time to find these individuals and they've been running from the police for a long period of time, we may not want to release them.
Well, my intent, my question is the people that are a risk to the public should stay in there. But,
absolutely.
Right.
And so the long answer to your short question was, we are looking at that and addressing it. There are some people that we believe can be released, and we're looking to do that now. And then we're going to review others and make sure, but the ones that are more serious, either public safety and or risk of flight, we will not look to release them. Some of the other ones are less, we may look to release some of that population.
And again, and these are ones that we know of for crimes that have been committed and have gone through the judicial system already, that are most of them that are in the jail. There's some that are there that were picked up the weekend before or whatever, but so
correct, and they're going to get arraigned.
Right, but so the point being is how moving forward, for new ones that come in, there might be sentencing guidelines or whatever that they're required to do something, but do we have the ability to say, well, you're going to have to report for your jail service, but you're going to do it in June instead of now?
Right. We could look potentially for an extended out sentencing piece. That's something else we've talked about, but we're really not going to look to do a lot of sentencing. Some of those are continued hearings. Really, it's going to be people that are arrested. They're going to be arraigned, either get bail set for them, depending on if they can make bail, or if it's serious enough and their bail is high because they are a serious public safety risk, then they'll stay in jail.
Thank you.
I think we should also note too, the law library is open, but the self-help clinic will not be going going on for the time being until at least this
Yes,
month is
thank you.
over. so.
That was the one piece I realized I didn't really put in there.
That's
I mean,
okay.
that's obviously mine, the law library falls in ours, and
Yeah.
we continue to maintain that. We continue to have that open every day, and it is open now currently for anyone to use. The self-help piece is there and available for anyone that needs to use that within the library, but the service that will
Legal
help with legal service will not be there for
The
a
time
period
being.
of time, starting now until we kind of get past this
Okay.
crisis point.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Not, thank you very much.
Thanks,
For the
all.
update of what's happening in the attorney's office.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if we could take a short break or do committee reports. I think we should wait till 9:30 with Kathy's, because we might have media interest in that, yet that might not be here.
Okay, we can do committee reports. Jim, you want to start us out today?
Sure. Wednesday, the 11th of March, along with Commissioner Wayland, I attended the Northwest Emergency Communications Board meeting via ITV hookup, and we discussed many of the same issues that we've been having ongoing, the difficulties of training and retaining dispatchers in the Northwestern District, and that was the main subject, and then some bylaw changes that they made over the recent months. Then on Thursday, I attended the Clay County Soil and Water Conservation District meeting, and we had all their committee reports and all that. And one of the interesting things that they spoke about was they're going to have a billboard highlighting invasive noxious weeds in Clay County to advise people about what they look like, and that billboard's going to be on the east end of Glendon, I believe, for a month or something like that. Jenny, is that right? Yeah. And that's my report.
Okay, Grant.
Jim already reported on the regional radio board. I had a Beyond the Yellow Ribbon meeting last week, and updates from the various groups that participate in that, and from the VA and Veteran Service Office, that type of thing. And let's see, yesterday we were supposed to have a meeting in Mahnomen for the Area Agency on Aging, and we ended up doing it by phone. And of course, most of the meeting, pretty much all of the meeting, was regarding the coronavirus and steps that are being taken to assist the elderly while this is going on. So that was it for me.
Jenny.
Thank you. I have a couple weeks worth. I had a land use meeting with Commissioner Gross and our planning and zoning staff. I had the MetroCog Executive Committee where we basically talked about the coronavirus. That day also had the coronavirus press conference, thanks to our public health department for their presence there. I attended the Buffalo River Watershed buffer hearing on jurisdictional ditches 20, 22, 23, 28, and 51. There was good citizen input there in terms of going forward with any implementation on those. There were some just concerns just from citizens who really weren't aware what the requirement was and concerned about existing lawn that will not be torn up because of that. As long as it's in a vegetative state, we're fine. Then on that Monday, attended the Buffalo Red Watershed District. Commissioner Campbell reported on that last week. And then I just had some different phone conversations with Lakes and Prairies Community Action and Lakeland Mental Health in terms of what the coronavirus policies and what they're doing going forward. Everyone kind of has their own approach to it, following the public health departments, what their wishes are, but for the most part, most of those entities will either be going remote in terms of staff coming in, or if there's a confirmed case, they will be closing. So that concludes my reports.
Okay, on Tuesday, March 10th, we had a Highway Tracking Committee meeting. Items that were discussed there were the North Broadway Bridge. That obviously is a joint bridge that's Clay County and the city of Fargo. There's been some long discussions about the stability of that bridge. It certainly is okay for now, but in the long term, if there's something that can be done to make that thing last another number of years. And so we continue that dialogue, and they're looking for some options that can keep that bridge open as far as we're concerned. Then Dave Overbo had received some communication from Barb Brody. If you remember, she's the one that we worked with in Washington, D.C. regarding highway funding. Right now, I think we're looking at if she wants to do it on a pro bono basis for us. I think that's kind of where we're sitting right now. So there's really no recommendation as far as an outright hire, right, Frank? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then he did start to look at some history of. If you recall, we started talking a little bit about should we do another bonding type of a deal to escalate when we can get projects done, and then use our state aid dollars to pay the bond back so that we can save some money. So they continue to look at that and see what the objectives would be. And then we did discuss a little bit about the 5-year plan. We're looking at a special meeting for that for the 24th of March. We'll see how that develops here now with all these changes. Later that day, we had a solid waste meeting that Commissioner Wayland and I, with Kirk and some others, regarding some interest from an outside agency and working with us to potentially have a public-private partnership in the operations of our landfill. So that was in the very early stages. There was certainly an interesting discussion. Later that day, then we went to Commissioner Gross and I also were at the Highway Department with a meeting with the City of West Fargo. They're doing some street projects, bonding projects, and then they were. Did I say West Fargo? I'm sorry, I'm in Dilworth. Some of those kind of abut some of our county roads, and so they were wondering, what the plan was with our county roads. And so, I think what our engineer stated was that currently our roads are in pretty good shape, and that there's, we really don't have it on our 5-year plan to do anything. And so, it was a good discussion, but nothing firm has come out of that. And I know Steve was there as well for that meeting. And then on Wednesday, the 11th, we had a special meeting of the Diversion Authority Public Outreach Committee. And it was all about communication plan updates and schedules. And we had people there from business leaders and others just coming up with looking at different ways to engage the public on where this project is in its phase of construction. So, and that concludes my report.
Okay, I too was at the Highway Tracking Committee meeting, which Kevin's already explained about, and I guess in Dilworth there, we've got a county road going right through the project that they're working on, and they're just concerned about what it's gonna look like when they do most of the south side of Dilworth, and they're not gonna do that one street, which is the county road, And they were just concerned whether we wanna do our part, doing the county's part of the road at that time. So there was some good discussion on that. Also on Tuesday, we had a highway track and also a meeting with Dilworth. Also, I went to the Markham Township meeting that night, and I was very impressed with Lauren. He had Julie Ball, state auditor, was up there to talk to the people, and I was very impressed with her presentation, and she gave a very good presentation of how the audits are done around the state, stuff like that, and I don't know, it's a feather in their cap for having a state official out there at their Markham County meetings. It was a very good meeting. Wednesday morning, we had the University of Minnesota Extension Committee meeting. There we have reports by, most of the reports are 4-H. They're still going under the first time that I think Mandy was there for presentation of 4-H, what's going on in 4-H. Randy Nelson, who's just very involved in all kinds of different things for the farmers and for different horticulturists. You know, he has given all kinds of presentations on that. If you read the FM Extra and stuff like that, he's in there. He's on the radio. He's putting on presentations. He's just a very good addition to the county extension office there. And we also had the extension Master Gardens. They are getting a few more members in that. They're going to be working on over the jail over here as soon as we're done with that project, or the spring, whatever they can get to. They're going to start working on there, get some of the gardens in there. Thursday. Well, also on Wednesday, I went to drug court. Again, it was great to see another person going through that thing and completing their, I think he took them almost a little bit over 2 years to do it, but it was just so great to see the family and support there going on. It was very good to see that. Thursday, we had the meeting on the boiler that we've already covered here with Joe here. We discussed that. And like I say, we had a tour of the boiler downstairs, and yeah, we do need a new boiler down there. So it's, the other one is leaking pretty bad that they can't even use anymore. Friday, we had Partnership for Health. Again, I think most of those items are going to be covered in the next few minutes here when Kathy comes up here with her group, and Josh Ebert gave us a good update on what is being done with COVID-19 and stuff like that. So there's a good presentation down there on Friday at Martinsville. With that, that concludes my report. We'll hold up with Steve and we'll go into this, bring Kathy and her group up here. Looks like she's got a big, maybe to bring some more chairs up here or something. Or just pull a few forward.
Thank you.
Would you like us to wait for Commissioner Campbell to come back?
Why don't we just take a few minutes here?
Okay.
So it's supposed to be 3 different ones there, you're handing?
3 different ones, correct.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thanks for having us. We have,
Just a minute, do you have?
We're short a blue one.
are you short a blue one?
We got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we took an extra one while I was gone.
I guess I gave him an extra one. So I want to introduce my team. This is my incident command team for this event and any other event that we may experience. So Jamie, you've met her before, the nursing director. Josh Ebert is our public health emergency preparedness guru. So he's the one that is keeping us all organized. And then Cheryl is actually our disease prevention and control nurse. So that's a key in this work that we're doing with COVID. We also have a public information officer that is working diligently as the rest of the team in regular hours and after hours and weekends to just get information out and to respond to the thousands of questions and emails that we are receiving. Of course,
Just before we go on, I just want to make an announcement. This is sort of a presentation of COVID-19 just for the public, you know, that just to be aware that we're giving them an update of what's happening in the county. Go ahead.
That's correct, yes. This is about COVID-19. This is a virus that is new, so everything, it's just an unprecedented challenge for everyone, for us and for all the healthcare facilities and all the agencies that are trying to keep, we're trying to keep ahead of this. It changes daily, sometimes more often during the day, so we're trying to keep ahead of all of the information to stay ahead of what we do for the prevention and response. Now, the thing that really ramped this up is on March 15th, there was our first confirmed case that there was community spread. So we didn't have that before. It was really, the infection really was linked to the travelers, those that were overseas travelers, and those that were in contact with those travelers. So this is new. So the first confirmed case in Minnesota, I'll clarify that is community spread. So in other words, this case was not linked to travel or connection with any travelers. So that's significant in the fact that it is much more infectious and it'll spread much more rapidly with community spread. So that's why we see this heightened response. We see the response by the governor. I passed out the emergency executive order by the governor of Minnesota. So he describes that in his executive order, and hence the information about why they're taking such unprecedented action in regards to closing restaurants for the dining in restaurants, closing the bars for people sitting in the bars, and the various other closures that you can see. They do want to keep essential things open. Healthcare systems obviously need to be opened. We need law enforcement and responders and pharmacies. So there are some things that just cannot close. But we're seeing, and grocery stores, obviously we don't want those to close either. We're seeing a lot of empty shelves with all of our grocery stores and other places that sell, the products that people are stocking up on, the non-perishable foods. Of course, toilet paper, everybody sees that one.
Are you saying stocking up or hoarding?
Well, both.
Okay.
So the hoarding, unfortunately, started a while back, and that leaves the shelves empty for those people that are just trying to get their, daily or weekly products. So that poses a problem as well for people. So there is hoarding going on. We do know that, and that's part of that fear. People are afraid of this virus and afraid of what it will do. So we're seeing a real uptick in our community mitigation and our responses. And so that's important for us to talk about. We need to talk about as an entity because based on the recommendations, the president has his recommendations out for 15 days to slow the spread. So he directed us to look at that and look at our critical infrastructure and look at who needs to really, what are the essential necessities that we need to continue and what are not. Because this is, again, to slow this down and stop the spread, it's going to take more than what we've been doing. This is very important to know that this is a different virus. It is not like influenza, which we have a vaccine for and we have antivirals for. The vaccine and antivirals are being tested for this coronavirus, but a vaccine is not anticipated to be ready for, you know, maybe even a year. So we don't have any arsenal to prevent this virus in regards to that. So it really is, the basic messages we always talk about is wash your hands, stay home when you're sick, cover your cough, you know, clean surfaces, all of those things. And now, of course, it's to limit your gatherings. So we'll see more churches will be doing kind of the not face-to-face anymore, but online, and we'll see much more of that happening because the gatherings of now 10, social gatherings of 10 or more are kind of not going to be the norm. We're trying to limit that. We have high-risk individuals. It is now 70 years old and over. That has changed over time, but recently they're saying now 70 and older are in the high-risk category. So nobody here is 70, so we're okay with that.
Thank you.
And then we have those with chronic health conditions. So they are also in the high risk, irregardless of their age. And those are with, you know, the heart disease, you know, asthma, diabetes. There's a variety of things that constitute those high-risk health conditions. So we have to be mindful of that they're in a high-risk category, which means the virus will be, it will be more difficult for those individuals, 70 and older, and those in the high risk, to combat this virus with not much support medically. So we have to be very diligent about this. This is not something that we can say business as usual anymore. We must take some pretty strong action for prevention. We must before we have a case. And we might have people out there that are ill. I have not been notified of a positive case as of right now in Clay County. I would be the first to get notified of a positive case that was tested through our public health lab in the metro area in St. Paul. We have not been notified yet of a positive case. So right now, Clay County does not have one. It doesn't mean we won't have one soon. We just don't have one now. And neither of the other counties in our west central region, so Becker, Wilkin, Otter Tail, as of yesterday, do not have a positive case. We haven't seen anything yet. We have not heard of a positive case in Fargo, Cass County as well. So that's great. We don't have positive cases, but it's a matter of time more than if we will get one. So I suspect that we don't know when. It's now community spread. Unfortunately, this virus has changed where it's community spread, which makes us needing to be a bit more diligent and a bit more proactive now in what we do. We really need to face this as, again, it's imperative that we make some really important decisions about how we're going to work, even within our county. So we know we have essential people that need to be working, but we also have non-essential things in our county that we need to really look at and determine, you know, how are we going to provide services and what can we get by without providing. The president says 15 days. So he's saying starting now, 15 days to slow this down. The governor is also, you know, saying March 15th is when we saw that first case. So it's the 17th today, so a couple of days ago is when they were confirmed this first case. So we need to start looking at that like right now and what we should do to mitigate this and to prepare and to provide. We need to provide information as well to the public to make sure that they understand this is really a priority. If you see in the governor's, and you may have read the governor's executive order about all of the things on March 17th at 5 o'clock, there's very specific things that he is requesting and ordering to close. And it lists, you know, the bars, the restaurants, food courts, theaters, gymnasiums, health fitness centers. I mean, it's very significant. So we also, as a county government, need to make that determination, and I mean, we need to kind of be diligent about this and in our decision-making about this case. So maybe I'll just have Josh talk a little bit about what we're doing in public health and how we're responding at this time.
Sure, yeah, I'd be glad to. Yeah, Kathy asked me to just try to give a short update on what's happening in the response within public health, our department specifically. I oversee the emergency preparedness coordination and planning for our department. I also help with Wilkin County and their services, and then within our CHB, which includes Becker and Otter Tail County, I help out with that work as well. I will just say this, that all the years of planning and preparing for all the other, for what public health's role would be in responses has certainly proven to be very valuable at this point. All those connections we've made with our partners, with our long-term care, our at-risk populations, working through social services and their folks with our corporate foster care and that have all really paid dividends since we've now experienced such a significant response here. With that said, just to give you a little bit of insight into the county's emergency planning and where we fit, and some of this is for the folks watching too, so they have a better understanding, but we work very closely, I do, with our emergency manager, now Gabe Tweeden, and so in the emergency response plans that the county has, public health is an emergency support function, which is, it's just a delineated number of functions through FEMA that are available for us to put in our plans as annexes. Our health and medical annex, emergency support function 8, delineates out many tasks that public health has in our roles in different types of responses. This would include one of them, responding to pandemics and things of that nature. So we have plans and processes for, and we tier it out in different categories of, we base the nature of our response with our department into the county on the resources that are being consumed, the need for information, for supplies and things like that. And so in this case, it's pretty significant, and probably not since the flooding that we've had in the past have we actually stood up our dock fully, which is our operations center, Department Operations Center, which is held in our Family Service Center. And so that's where we now meet and congregate, hold our meetings, and all of those kinds of things. So it's pretty significant, and so there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a number of us here and others that are a part of that team that's been activated. The other thing I wanted to touch on was, I know Kathy had mentioned COOP, which is our continuity of operations, so Gabe and I have been talking about that and working on the county's approach to handling some questions and concerns within our other departments on making sure that we're prepared within our departments for the possibility of additional disruptions in services and things that were already discussed. So that discussion's ongoing, and we're working on things there. That pretty much covers it, I think, Kathy, unless there's anything else you want me to touch on.
And then Jamie talk about
I just wanted to draw your attention to an email that came out from the Association of Minnesota Counties that you should have received, and you have a copy of that also. But this was as of 4:32 yesterday, and already some things have changed since then, but just wanted to make sure that you saw it. I know you get a lot of emails, but one of the things I wanted to really point out in the second paragraph on the first page is that there is really a prioritization of testing. We're hearing a lot of discussion of testing, and the priority from MDH is saying the greatest impact is on the healthcare system, and that includes currently hospitalized individuals and healthcare workers. So just again to stress that the most important part of testing is that the currently people who are hospitalized and healthcare workers. MDH also stated that people who do not need to be tested for COVID-19, if they are managing their symptoms at home, if they are sick, they should stay home for at least 7 days and should be fever-free for at least 3 days without the aid of fever-reducing medication before returning to work or back into the public. So just really a note to the issue of testing. On the last paragraph on that first page of that email, it talks about our most vulnerable population, which is that 70 and over, and the chronically ill. And I wanted to let you know that our public health and social service teams are working very diligently with our long-term care and community-based service providers. And they're doing an excellent job of limiting access to visitors, and also thinking outside the box and how we can serve our clients that we are required to see face-to-face. So we're working more, instead of going into those facilities and homes, to doing telephone assessments and really communicating with our clients to address their healthcare needs, working with their providers that are struggling to get those messages out there. Again, I want to draw back to the issue of those partnerships, and Josh's connection with our long-term care community has, they quickly come to him because they have planned and exercised. Also want to note that for the last at least a couple decades, public health has been preparing and exercising for pandemic diseases with our first responder partners and our healthcare partners. So plans are in place and exercises have happened in the past. The second page of that email for you just kind of highlights some of those things that we can do to control the spread of that, the 15-day slow of the spread. First thing is listen to and follow the directions of your state and local authorities. I know that's a difficult thing when people don't see anything going on in their backyard, but the messages are changing with almost every minute, and so just to kind of keep in tune and check into those messages. Also kind of highlight some of the things that we can do on an individual basis. At the end of that email, it links back to Minnesota Department of Health and CDC, and they are trying to keep those resources up to date for the public. It talks about how you can prepare for your family, how you can prepare in the workplace. There's links to OSHA in the workplace. Excellent resources in that. Just wanted to draw your attention to that email that came out from AMC.
Are we putting that out to the public at all somehow? The 15 ways, is that going in any newspapers or?
We are going to be talking to one of the newspapers actually today, and we are just getting this information, so we'll be getting that out as well. There is some information on our website already, and then we'll be sending further information out there. And if need be, we'll certainly set up another press conference to talk about that.
Okay. Jim, do you have a question?
I have a question. Do you have any information about what they believe the incubation period for the virus is?
I don't have any specific information at this time, but I can certainly get that to you. I don't know exact incubation period. I know that you you can be a carrier and be asymptomatic, so you might not have any of the symptoms, and you can still spread that.
And that is for some period of time?
Well, we do know it at least for a few days before you become symptomatic, but I can give you some exact information as we look into that. We also know that this virus was one that wasn't impacting our youth, so the 19-year-olds and under, for whatever reason, that wasn't one of our high-risk groups. However, it is a group of people, individuals, that can spread the virus. So even if they aren't getting ill, they can spread it to others. So that's
And is that an indicator that the virus is mutating?
Correct. Yeah, it's changing, and which viruses often do. With the influenza, every year they have to test it to see which viruses within that are the most, the ones that they need to address the most to reduce the morbidity and mortality for people.
Yeah, Commissioner Haney asked what I think is a really important question. Early in your report to us, you said that currently there's been no cases in Clay County, or for that matter in Fargo. But the importance of the social distancing that's out there, from what I've read on this, just like you said, somebody can be asymptomatic, is that what you call it?
Correct.
But they're a carrier of it. Mm-hmm. And so even though we have no confirmed cases in Clay County, as somebody goes to a church service or something, you don't know if the person next to you, they could still actually be transferring that. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is
so
correct.
so following these guidelines, I think, is extremely important. You certainly don't want to, there's enough anxiety that everybody is having over this right now, but I think it's not a, I think it's important that we understand this thing, but, we'll get through it. The more we follow these guidelines, I think the better off we're going to be. And I happened to read where there was one place where they were going to continue to, offer services until there was a known case in Clay County, which then they would change things. And I would just encourage people to think differently than that. What's your opinion on that?
Yes, that's correct. First of all, we don't have enough test kits to test everyone. So as Jamie pointed out, they're testing, some of the higher risk, higher needs, but there's not that there isn't other people that are ill out there. Also, this virus, some people get a very mild case, so they don't get very ill. It feels like maybe something similar to your common cold, so they aren't getting as ill. Some people are getting, it varies in the illness that they're seeing. So even those that don't feel very ill could still be positive and pass that virus on. So you're correct in that.
And if I can, Mr. Chairman, in one of the questions that you raised in terms of how are we getting this out there, can you talk a little bit about this curve? Those that maybe have been following this, the importance of that curve, and what this will do will help keep that curve from being a big bubble. And
yep. I'll do my best without having that in front of me, but basically that's, when it comes to infection control, if you can reduce the spread, then, in our normal flu season, basically, and I know this isn't flu, but we see that same kind of a thing, is that if people are diligent in having their flu shot, washing their hands, staying home if they're ill, the message is all the same, because that is the people that are going to fight off the virus pretty quickly themselves are not the ones that are really the most ill and are hospitalized. And so what we see is the most vulnerable are the ones that we have to protect. And so that's what we're really talking about. They call it non-pharmaceutical interventions, but not medication, but washing our hands, keeping our distance, taking serious the fact that we may just get mild symptoms, the average person, but we are protecting and slowing down those that are ill. So by us all doing what we can to prevent the spread, it actually brings down the number of cases that we have. And that's our best weapon against controlling the disease or slowing it down, is by us doing exactly what you're saying, is focusing on protecting the most vulnerable in our population.
But isn't that also critical to keep our hospital beds and that type of thing from being inundated?
Right,
Isn't that part of the
because
reason?
if we stop the spread of the disease or slow down the spread of the disease, because we can't stop it, but if we slow it down, then our hospitals can keep up with the number of people that are needing the hospital services.
Some people may not be following this. You hear a lot of things. You hear a lot of things about the generation that. Your generation, were the millennials that...
I am not a millennial.
Well, you're close. Well, you're close.
A little?
That was a compliment.
I
know. I think there's, I still see it, and because there isn't anything around here, there's like this... it's not going to happen to us type of thing. And I would caution, I think even in the presidential messages that have come out, the staff that they have and the doctors that are there actually did address the millennials in this thing. And I think that's important, that they start to realize that, they might be fine and they might not get as sick, but if they go see their grandparents or something like that, it can be a game changer.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
And that's very important to say that we need to operate even differently than we do with our regular flu season. So this ratchets up our response and our need to do much higher level of the preparedness stuff. I'll let Cheryl talk about just a little bit about getting your household ready too, so.
Good morning,
people
and
understand
thank you
that.
for this time. So, in just talking about how to prepare yourself and your home, obviously, that's going to depend on what you're dealing with, whether you're a parent with children at home or you're caring for a loved one that would be in a high-risk area. Just to keep in mind to keep some of those supplies. I'm not talking about hoarding. I don't even want to use the word stocking up because it tends to be perceived differently. But just to have the items on hand that if you were sick or if you were caring for someone who is sick, that you have enough supplies on hand if you would need to stay home for a number of days. I can tell you as far as our K through 12 schools, because I also, part of my role with public health is the school nurse for Ullin-Hitterdal School District. So obviously we all know that the schools are closed right now. Ullin-Hitterdal, Holly, and Dilworth, Glendon, and Felton schools are all providing daycare for people who are working in essential roles. So basically your healthcare workers, EMS, fire department, law enforcement, those types of things.
More at his as well.
Yes, and I just spoke with one of my colleagues who is a school nurse for the Moorhead School District, and she said that both Ellen Hopkins and Robert Asp across the street are providing daycare right now, and they're also providing meals. So that is a good thing. The schools are doing everything they can to help out the families that have children in their districts to get by, because we wanted to make sure also that the children that are, especially the children that are receiving free or reduced meals are covered, that they are receiving a healthy meal every day, and they're doing a great job of that. Also, there are a lot of rumors that are going around, as I'm hearing from different contacts in the community. So I have taken a number of calls from the public, and so I am discrediting those rumors, giving people factual information, and also letting them know where they can seek those resources out through our Clay County website, through the CDC, through Minnesota Department of Health, and that. And as Kathy mentioned, we've talked to the media, and I'm sure we will continue to do that to try and get true facts out there to the public. We don't want people to panic, but this is a serious situation, and we all need to be highly aware of it so that we can take care of ourselves. Maybe if we're not concerned for our own health, as we've all stated, think about the health of others who may be at risk.
Go ahead.
Well, I appreciate your work, one, and your presence in the community. And I think it's important to note that this is not anything that we're all enjoying. Ask any parent that all of a sudden has to work and juggle everything and, you know, try to get their kids, keep them busy with all of these things closing. So it is not fun, but I think we should also stress that if it takes 15 days of these uncomfortable staying home, social distancing, not going out and celebrating St. Patrick's Day, whatever, to prevent 30 to 60 days of continued, I think we can all rally together and definitely support that. My question comes as somebody on this board, how can we, we talk about the conversations that will need to happen in terms of essential employees and that piece. I think you'll have a meeting after this meeting to discuss that, but I think that we should lead by example in terms of any future board meetings. We should probably limit the reports and the people present there. And so what can we do, what can we control in the courthouse and the campus in terms of controlling the spread?
I think that's a good point, is, certainly there's a number of meetings that are already, they are not occurring, or they're occurring either conference calling or WebExes, that type of thing. So we need to, I think we need to really follow the strict guidelines that is set forth about the non-essential and essential, and I know our emergency manager has sent the continuity of operation plans to all the departments to determine what is essential and what is non-essential. So we need to really look at that to even see within our own, our employees, what needs to be who needs to do what, that's essential services. I think we don't have policies right now for working remotely or for having people stay home necessarily. So we need to really look at our policies, and I think it sounds like we'll be doing that maybe in the PIC meeting to determine what kind of action needs to happen. I think we have to be a bit more flexible. Now is the time, clearly, because we don't want everyone coming if there's some work that can be done remotely. So we really need to look at that. So we'd appreciate that, having that conversation with the board to determine what should we do in those cases. And we have some high-risk employees that meet the high-risk definition because they have chronic health conditions. So we have to be mindful that we have people within our employee pool that meet the criteria for being in a high-risk group. And that's concerning to them. We have a number of employees that have contacted us with concerns about, being at work and surrounded by a number of employees. So certainly I think we need to discuss meetings, the board meeting, and how you will do that in the future. I think those are all things that we should work on, and we need to do it soon.
And I guess part of my question is, I was at the press conference, was that last Thursday or 2 Thursdays ago?
Yeah.
And so I think I called you Friday and said, let's make sure we have an update of coronavirus at the board meeting on Tuesday. Well, guess what? Everything has changed so much in just a short amount of time.
Correct.
It was, then it was 250, and then it went to 50, and then from what the president said yesterday. And so we may meet this afternoon, or whoever's on that committee may meet and make a recommendation based on policy, and things could change drastically before the board has an opportunity to meet on the following Tuesday.
Correct.
To adopt something. And so should we talk about having a board meeting by Wednesday or Thursday if we need to implement things? I think we're in uncharted waters, but we also want to make sure that we address these things soon.
I think, Commissioner Mojo, that's very wise, because I don't think we can wait till next Tuesday when we're talking about 15 days, so an immediate response to this. I think that makes sense that we need to have some discussions, and then the board would have to take action in just a day or two. So I think we need to have some pretty hard discussions and determine what kind of things we can do in our county governments.
Well, I think it's important that you came forward here and gave us a good presentation, that the people in the county know that we are working on this and that we are prepared to help them out. But I think one important thing we have to give out to is that we need the citizens of Clay County to act responsible. It's not just what we can do here, We need the whole Clay County and the whole area. We need people to act responsible in this thing. If it means not going to a meeting, not going to certain things, sometimes make up your own mind what's the best thing for me to do is to stay home and be prepared, be safe. So I think that's important.
I just have one other question. Can you talk a little bit about on this virus? What are there any symptoms that occur early on? I know there's some that might be similar to a flu, but is there something where it should be a red flag to somebody that?
The typical symptoms that they have been saying with this virus is the cough, shortness of breath, and fever. Those are the 3 specific symptoms. Some people have body aches, and there may be headaches, but those 3 have been the primary. So cough, shortness of breath, and fever.
In no particular order.
Correct, in no particular order. And again, previously, it was also, did you travel overseas, or were you in contact with someone that traveled? And there's some level 3 countries listed. So were you in any of those level 3 countries for sure, then you needed to be staying home for 14 days. But there's certainly spread now, just even within a week, they're spread to so many other places in larger numbers of cases. So really those 3 symptoms are still the cough, shortness of breath, and fever. And that's what the medical facilities will determine as far as, and also, are you in the high-risk group? And they still are asking the travel questions, or have you been in contact with someone that has been a positive? So those are the symptoms they're looking for. It's respiratory. It's all respiratory. If you have some GI symptoms, that's not technically, they would not consider that this virus.
And I guess that's pretty much what I was saying. We need our citizens to act responsible, If you were in those situations, stay home.
That's correct. We want all citizens to understand that this is a different time. This is a new virus, and we need everyone to be diligent. The governor really laid out a number of things in his executive order, which is we really want people to follow this. This is his order for all citizens of Minnesota.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your report. Keep us updated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I maybe would like to follow up on part of all of our questions, is that at some point that we'll have to make a policy change this week. And so I don't know if we want to set like tomorrow or
suspending the regular committee meetings for the rest of the month?
well, just how we go forward with staff or county government. I mean, yesterday there was a county in Minnesota that closed all offices, and I'm not saying that that's what we want to do, but
Well, I think we just need to be flexible and let Steve let us know if we have to have a meeting. We'll just come together and have a meeting.
I might have some things to tell us now.
Yeah, and if we set something specific and, it may not be till the following day that we're needed, so.
My concern is as far as cutting out committee meetings that involve some of us in the county. I mean, if we expect our employees to be here, I think we can be too as commissioners.
I guess that's not really what I meant. What I meant is in terms of employees and what on-campus services are, I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
What's essential and what's not.
Yeah, I mean,
Correct.
I wasn't saying so much as my committees. There are committees that aren't meeting just because they don't want to. There are different committees that you have to have a quorum for bills, to pay bills. So I think that's all case by case, but.
Well, with that, we'll move on to Steve with your report.
All right, I'll maybe touch on that and just other things in just a couple of minutes. So just first of all, attended on the 10th. I attended the meetings that have been covered by commissioners, highway tracking, the solid waste meeting, and the city of Dilworth. On the morning of the 11th, I was invited out to see the rollout of the Minnesota Drive at motor vehicle. It's going to be replacing Minlars in November. And so the employees out there got to see the first look of that program. There's a lot of excitement over the changes that are going to be made that are going to hopefully provide a much better product than what we've had with Minlars. I do think that in our discussions, just of note, the motor vehicle is an area that we're going to need to address on a consistent basis there are generally 20 to 25 people waiting while there are people at the window, and so we'll have to, our citizens can look for some sort of policy change there as a part of our discussions this week. The 12th, we met with Joe in regards to his boiler issue this morning. And again, then much of the issue over from the 11th on has been working with Kathy, her staff, Gabe from Emergency Management, Tim Dent, Mark Sloan, Brian Melton, Shelley Jeffers from the courts, and of course numerous contacts with our department heads. We did have a special management meeting yesterday that Gabe addressed, where he handed out the COOP programs for each of our departments. We're hoping that they'll be back by tomorrow with how they plan to operate in the event of less staff or I guess less staff or a situation where the board determines that we're going to close certain departments. Kathy also provided our group an update this week. One of the things that Gabe touched on, again, is our staff are being provided documents, number one, to copy and point different issues that they're having relating to this virus. Lori is also be identifying a code for time cards for staff in the event that there is a reimbursement that will be able to collect that data. A couple different things that just maybe jumping a little bit around here. A few different things from we heard from Brian earlier about the 7th District continues to maneuver, I guess, with the virus issues. Again, for our citizens, I think the easiest or best thing to do is if you have questions about whether you need to report for court or for jury duty, is to call 218-299-5065, and they should be able to help you. As we've had some discussions, I think Governor Walz and the President has looked at different strategies for us to take a proactive stance and identifying different ways that we can work with our employees. I would recommend that after a meeting today, we have a personal issues committee to begin to address some of those things. As far as a meeting this week, there are special meetings as far as open meeting laws. We could certainly get Brian's opinion on that, but when it comes to special meetings, there are some ways that we don't have to necessarily provide notice as we do for a normal meeting. So that's something that we can look at. Just a couple different things of note. We have our corrections facility is no longer doing fingerprints for the public. That's on our notice. We'll be looking at that in the future. Georgia and Joe are signing their staff. We're having at least staff go through all of our county facilities 2 to 3 times per day, depending on the day. We also will have staff that each weekend will be preparing the facility for the week. There are a number of businesses or departments that have, other agencies that we rent to in the Family Service Center that have closed, and so that will allow some additional cleaning opportunities for our custodial staff. I think we've had some discussions, I guess, that I would recommend. We do have a meeting, if we want to formally, with our city and county meeting on Thursday, and our county and city meeting with Moorhead, if we would want to go ahead and cancel that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I do believe, Matt, you have a meeting scheduled for tonight. Is that scheduled to go through?
I did talk with our chair yesterday, and he was of the opinion that we should not continue with those meetings. I'm going to check in with him again after board today.
Okay.
Is that fine?
It's the Board of Adjustments.
Oh.
Yep. And then the Development Code Subcommittee.
Those applications, there is a certain amount of time that we have to take action on.
Yes.
So if you were to not meet tonight, you could still meet in
So we have one.
April?
We have one public hearing on the agenda. If we were to postpone that to our regular April meeting, we would still be within that 60-day rule.
I would
So-
probably, I would recommend you not meet tonight, to reschedule.
Thanks.
One of the other things that we'll be doing on the countywide is today you'll be seeing signs going up at public doors. Where we'll be asking our citizens 3 questions that if they've traveled to certain areas or countries, if they've been in 6 feet of an infected COVID-19 person, and also if they have a fever of 104 or higher, we would ask that they don't come into our buildings. So at least seen those pop up.
104.
Oh, excuse me, 100.4, sorry.
If you have 104, you're not walking into
it. 100.4. And so that's something you'll see. I would note, I did send out a letter to all of our employees yesterday. One of the things that we're planning to do is, as you've seen, we put up hand sanitizers in different locations, and we've also indicated that we're going to be providing some wipes for their main areas, or public or private areas. Joe is in the process of trying to secure those supplies, and so if any of our employees have questions, that's where we're at right there. I did get a request from Teamsters Union 120 this week about the outbreak. I'm just going to pass these around for you guys to take a look at. One of the things that they're again concerned with is the spread, containing the spread as much as we can for our employees. And they've provided 6 different steps they'd like to see the county sign a letter of understanding on. I think most of what is there is, it would be things that would be agreeable, things that we're already doing, or things that Kathy and her staff are looking to do. Number 4, I guess I would have a concern based on the fact that we haven't had any discussions as a county yet. This board has consistently looked at trying to be consistent with our unions and our staff, and so in number 4, they're looking that employees in their union shall suffer no loss of pay other than contractual benefits due to time lost while on a quarantine. And so I don't know that at this point we would want to do that without having further exploring some of the opportunities or options that this board may be looking to extend to all employees. But with that, I would yield for any comments from you.
Well, I think we can discuss this at our PIC meeting today, some of these issues, but I guess at least at this point, I'm not in favor of signing any kind of agreement. We don't have enough information, and to me, it doesn't make any sense to sign anything right now. And it's also something we'd have to discuss with our labor lawyers and whether it's prudent for us to do that, so.
I think we have already taken quite a few steps as far as what we can do about the COVID-19, so to establish some more policies and stuff. I'm not ready to do it right now.
Well, I think that you're right. We've tried to address as many of these as possible, but the unknown is the unknown, and so many things will change. Hopefully when we get to the other side of this, both the federal and state government will be prepared to help address the hardships that this has put upon employees. And at that point, I think this board will be more than willing to look at additional ways how we can help our employees. But I think our time really should be addressing how we're going to prevent the spread first. So I agree, I'm not in favor of signing this.
Okay, just a couple more things. I just wanted to clarify, you as the board discussed earlier about not allowing out-of-state travel other than to Fargo. Is there a time frame in which you'd like to place on that for right now? You talked about April 14th, but is that something that you'd like to do in a review at further meetings?
Well, I think the schools will have a big decision by the 28th of March, and so I think for just saying April 1st initially, but with the expectation that it will be 30 days into, I'll defer to Kathy there, but, if we say April 17th, that probably helps us.
Yeah, it's subject to extension, sure. We don't know.
Okay. And then just one other thing, I would note that the MCIT has remind us that we do have EAP available for our employees if they're struggling with anything, but particularly now they have specific sessions for those struggling with the COVID-19. They have access to that. And lastly, not related to COVID-19 is I did receive my census information in the mail this week, and so for our citizens to monitor that, and I know there's a lot with the COVID going on, there's a lot, but that census is still extremely important to make sure that we complete that.
As a follow-up to that, I did the same thing. It took just a few minutes online, and what that also will do is it'll mean nobody has to come knocking on your door.
That's great.
And because the census is still important, so
I was surprised at the number of people I talked to this week, and they all said, I did it, it just, it seems like that doesn't take very long, and let's encourage everybody to do that.
That concludes my
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of things for Steve maybe. First off, in terms of the DMV, I'm very concerned as we move forward with the length of time that people sit in there. It seems to me, and I don't know if Gabe, if you've heard any of this, but it seems to me I read something too, that there might be some relief from the individuals, from their time period on licensing and stuff like that. Have you heard anything on that, Gabe? So, when some of the reasons that people go into the DMV, of course, is to have their licenses renewed.
Yep.
And I thought that I read that there was an extension of that beyond the deadline date for them to do that.
I don't have a discussion about that. I don't know.
Okay, it's something that I think
I
we.
suspect probably a lot of.
Yeah, but I think we need to check on that. You know, and if that's the case, you know, we might have to look at doing this by appointment or something. I'm throwing some ideas out there.
We had a conference call with a lot of the agents from my region, and some of the counties, I think, like Beltrami, one in particular, they are basically limiting access to all their buildings, so they have a sign hanging up with the phone number to call. And they ask those screening questions, you know, have you been out of the country, whatnot, and then if people are able to come and they'll essentially set up appointments. So DMV can very well, it's going to take a little bit of extra time and manpower, but maybe people wait in their cars.
I think we need to look at that. I do. You know, we're talking about not only protecting the public, but our employees over there, they're subject to anybody walking in there right now, just like everywhere. But so we need to do whatever we can to fix that. I want to go to a minute about Jenny with the public hearings regarding permit applications, and obviously we like to act on permit applications as often as we can, and once a permit application comes in, there's a deadline process for us having to do that, and that in some instances requires public hearings. The last thing we want to do right now is have public hearings. You know, so I don't know if we should be contacting AMC or what we need to do to maybe have the governor address that 60-day deadline thing that's out there, that, you know, because if we don't do it, a permit automatically becomes valid, and that might not always be the right thing either. You know, so I think that's important that we check into that as well. All this stuff is so fluid right now. But I hate to see us having to have required public hearings because of a time deadline.
And maybe one thing, Mr. Chair, from availability of the board, looking at Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, are there any issues that would not allow you to attend in the event that we would schedule another meeting?
I'm going to be doing what's been suggested, and I'll be at home.
That's the Mojo homeschool, so I will be home entertaining 4 children.
And whatever we can do is if we can allow, even for those of us who, you know, like Jenny, to be able to call in, that might be an alternative to some of these things.
Okay. Anybody else? No, we're adjourned.